Okay, last volume unit we're going to talk about is spheres, and then we're also going to cover composite figures, which are just two or more three-dimensional shapes put together. So we did this with area in 2 dimensions, but we're also going to talk about it quickly with 3 dimensions for volume. So volume of a sphere, pretty straightforward because again, the only measurement that we have or that we would need to know is the radius. Formula is 4/3 pi r to the third power, right? So kind of looks similar to the pi r squared, which we see in the area formula, but we have 4/3 pi r to the third. The only thing that might differ is sometimes you might see a diameter given to you, but we know that if I take the diameter, or if I have the diameter, I can just take half of that to find the radius. So, and then I can plug that into the formula here. So 4/3 pi r to the third power. All right, so we're just going to use that. So right away here, I have a sphere. I want to find the volume. 4/3 pi r to the third. When you're doing 4/3 in your calculator, you can literally just type in 4 divided by 3, and then times pi times my radius here, which is 7 to the third power. And to do the third, you're going to have to use the caret button, right? So what I plugged into my calculator just now was 4 divided by 3 times pi times 7 caret 3. And that gives me 1436.75, so we'll say 8. If we wanted to do an exact answer, so if we wanted to leave this in terms of pi, I would take 7 to the third power, which is 343, and then take 4/3 of that. So just take times 4 divided by 3. Okay, that doesn't give me a nice even value. I get 457 and 0.3 repeating. So we would have to figure out, it would probably just be, what's 344? 3 times 4. 1372 over 3 pi would be the exact answer. And then down here is your approximate answer. Okay, now here we have a hemisphere, which is just, again, a fancy word for half of a sphere. So if I was going to find the volume of this, I could just use my 4/3 pi r to the third, and then take that and divide it by 2. You could also do, so hemisphere is the word, and you could also just do 2/3 pi r to the third, but that's remembering a separate formula, so I think it's easier to just do a sphere formula, which is the 4/3 pi r to the third, and then divide that by 2. So if I do that, my radius is 5, and then I'm going to take all of that. I'm putting that in parentheses because I want to make sure I get that number before I divide by 2. So 4 divided by 3 times pi times 5 to the third gives me 523.6. Divide that by 2, and so I would get 261.8. And for volume, cubic units, remember. Okay, so if you see that, again, it's just a hemisphere, which is half the sphere, so just take half the volume. Okay, so composite figures, just like when we did this with area, we're just going to break this up into 2 different pieces, right? So imagine that there's a line right here, and I split these 2 shapes up. I have shape number 1, which would be a rectangular prism. And then shape number 2, which is half a cylinder, right? It's like if I took that cylinder and cut it, sliced it right down the middle. So I'm just going to find the volume of each of those and then add those together, right? So total volume equals the volume of the rectangular prism plus the volume of half the cylinder So I just have to find those two pieces. All right, so let's look at rectangular prism. If I say that this is my base here, right? Area of the base would be, so hold on, let me backtrack a second. Volume is just area of the base times the height. So big B volume would be 12 times 24. So that's 288. And then the height there would be this distance, which is 10. So that would be 2,880, because if we're multiplying by 10, we can just add that 0 on the end. Okay, now I look at the cylinder, right? So this is the circular base. Imagine that it went all the way around, but we know we have this distance, right, where I cut it off, which is the diameter. Okay, that's 12, because it's going to be the same as that side over there. So the radius then, if the diameter is 12, right, the radius is just half of that. Okay, so that would be 6. And volume of a cylinder is just pi r squared h. So the only difference is we're just going to take half of that. So I'm going to take half of pi times 6 squared. Now, again, this would be the height because it's connecting the two bases, the two circles, and that's 10, just like it is over there. Okay, so 0.5 or 1 divided by 2 times pi times 6 squared times 10. And that gives me 565.5. Again, if I wanted to find the exact, if for some reason it asked me to find exact, I would take 6 squared, which is 36, times 10, so 360, and then divide that by 2 to use this 1/2. So it would be 180 pi. But that 180 pi is this 565.5. So take my 2880 plus 565.5, add those two together. My total volume would be 3,445.5, and units would be cubic inches. Okay, so we will do some more practice with this, but again, it's just breaking it up into two shapes, figuring out what those two shapes are, figuring the volume for each, and then adding those together.